I don't know who in the yarn community or the craft community at large needs to hear this, but you really need to learn when to shut the fuck up. A lot of you are about to get yourselves in a whole world of trouble just because you don't know when to stop. What I'm talking about today is copyright infringement, and the reason I am qualified to talk to you about this today is I actually work in the compliance space in my normal day-to-day job. Now, I don't often have to deal with copyright or trademark sorts of issues. They do come up occasionally, but in the corporate world, they do their due diligence and they understand the severity of copyright infringement so that when these things happen, it's usually purely by accident and not the blatant disregard for copyright that keeps going on in the craft community. And then a lot of you have the audacity to complain about it, and all you're doing is drawing attention to it and incriminating yourselves or your friends. I just completely don't understand it. So because my job from day to day is to try to keep people out of jail, I'm going to do the same for my craft yarny friends out there and give you a little bit of a rundown. The obvious disclaimer in the room is I am not a copyright attorney or intellectual property attorney. I am not your copyright or intellectual property attorney. If you have any questions whatsoever about your situation and how it applies to you, I highly, highly recommend that you reach out to a local copyright attorney. They do exist. And if you can't afford that, then maybe don't play stupid games and risk winning stupid prizes, because that's where we're at in the knit and crochet community and crafting community. Is I'm going to talk today in purely highly hypothetical terms to illustrate what could or could not happen and how things can get really sticky and tricky, and maybe how to stay out of them. So that way you're not facing all of these crazy penalties and potentially prison time. Purely hypothetically, let's just say you are a crochet designer and you really love horror movies that were created by someone that is not you, and they own the rights to the characters that they have created and have starred in this movie. But you really want to do something to honor your favorite movies, so you're going to create your own little stuffed crochet. Say it's a Chucky, just for example's sake, that you just love and it's adorable and it brings you so much joy. Now, if you do that for yourself, that's purely considered fan art and is not copyright infringement on its own. That is just you created something and you get to enjoy it. And I have actually done this. I have made character-inspired stuffies that I either kept for myself or gifted off to someone, and it was a one-off situation for those pieces. So that on its own is not a big deal. Where things can get a little bit tricky is if you decide, hey, a lot of people seem to really like my cute little Chucky doll in my design. I'm going to go ahead and write a pattern, and I'm going to go ahead and sell it on, say, Etsy, for example. And that's really not a good idea for so many reasons, because you don't own the rights to the character Chucky. And Etsy is known to crack down on copyright infringement because, again, they understand the severity of copyright law and all of the punitive damages that they could incur by allowing you to sell something that is Chucky inspired or anything like that, especially in the situations where you're not even trying to hide that, say, it's Chucky, because that's the example that we are using today, just, again, to illustrate where things could go wrong. So it really bothers me when I hear that a designer, a crafter, or whatever has been putting out their art and has not tried to hide what character and hasn't tried to rename it or anything like that. They're definitely putting it out there. They're trying to get that search engine. They're trying to make their money. And I get it. I get the temptation because popular characters like Chucky, especially around Halloween time. I mean, I'm wearing a Hello Kitty licensed tee that was properly licensed. I understand that temptation and that you do want to share it with other crocheters. However, it's simply not right. So it really bothers me when I hear someone in the crafting crochet community boo-hooing about Etsy took down my shop. Honest to goodness, you should be so lucky that that is the only punishment or punitive damage that you have, is that they shut down your Etsy and you cannot sell on Etsy anymore. So if that has happened to you, I'm sorry, but you need to count your lucky stars because this could have gotten so much worse. And down the road, it could get so much worse. And I'll explain why later. So again, you think you're doing something harmless and you're doing this like inspired thing, but you're not really hiding it. And you're using the character name such as Chucky, for instance, in this purely hypothetical situation. And you want that search engine-ness and get more customers. It's going to find more people that want Chucky-inspired things. Again, I completely understand the temptation. And especially, you might be looking around at other Etsy shops that haven't gotten busted yet, and you're like, but other people do it, so I'm perfectly fine to do it too. And I really don't think that's a good idea. Let's just say, hypothetically, your pattern is out there for purchase, and maybe the rightful owner purchases it. Or maybe a company that creates crochet kits purchases this design. So one of two things might have happened here. So the rightful owner, whether it's the creator or maybe the creator who sold the rights to, say, a studio, in this case for Chucky, that they could very well take that pattern because they own the rights to Chucky and, I don't know, maybe strip your pictures out of it and produce it as their own. And the reason why they know they could get away with this is because if you try to make an issue out of it, they will absolutely countersue. And I'm pretty sure their lawyers are better than anything I could afford personally. I don't know what your financial situation is, but that's not a game that personally I would be willing to play at all. So you could get completely buried in legal fees, fines, and again, prison time just because you wanted to play around and find out. The other potential situation that could happen is option B, which this hypothetical crochet kit company decides, I'm going to purchase this pattern, again, make similar adjustments to like what I mentioned before. And again, they know that you really have no recourse in this because you don't own the rights to, let's just say, Chucky. And so now they've purchased this pattern from you and they go to Universal Studios and they say, hey, Universal Studios, would you like to back this crochet kit and have a licensed something that we can sell to the masses? And both of us are going to make money and we're going to be happy. And that Universal Studios might not even know you exist. They probably don't know that the pattern was stolen for all intents and purposes. So now you've put in all this time and effort to write in a pattern that someone could steal and reuse in some way, whether it's option A or option B, and you cannot do anything about it. So why would you go through that hassle to begin with? It makes absolutely no sense to me. And I know it's unfortunate and it sucks to have done all of that work, but they did it the right way, to be perfectly honest. And I'm using right way in quotation marks because, of course, you don't want someone to steal all of your work, but they could claim it as their own because what are you going to do about it? Incriminate yourself? I don't think that's a very good idea, personally. I'm not saying that either of those options, A or B, are necessarily the right thing because it is kind of sucky. But the best way to go about it, and we can sit here and say corporate greed, blah, 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 discuss the ethics and debate the ethics of what's right and what's wrong in this situation, who should own this crochet pattern, allegedly. But at the end of the day, the law is the law, regardless of what we ethically feel as crafters and as artisans in our respective fields. So, unfortunately, you have no rights. And in fact, you did something very illegal. And now it's to the point where there are complaints blatantly, openly online. I don't even think I would personally complain about something like that in a private server or Facebook group, social media setting, because you just never know who's in there. Because I'm not the person that has it on their heart to go out and tattle on other people. And that's why I'm keeping this purely hypothetical and why I'm not naming names. We're not going down any of that. I'm just speaking in terms of generality of what could or could not happen and why maybe we need to shut up and stop putting ourselves either at risk of incriminating ourselves because we're complaining about it, or, talking about it of, say, this thing is going on with this designer that I like, and now you're risking your friend or your favorite designer getting in trouble. That is really crappy just because you felt like it's not right. However, what they did was wrong in the first place. So I think the way to have gotten around this and to do it better next time, or if you want to go down this route, is go ahead, create your pattern. Don't sell it yet. I understand that you may not have the kind of money to license something. I frankly don't know exactly what that could run, because something like, say, a Chucky from Universal Studios could probably go in the 5 to 6 figures, maybe higher. I don't genuinely know. However, you still could have reached out to them and said, hey, I created this thing. I own the rights to my written work for myself and my personal use. And there are ways to go around this and about this. And that's why, if this is something that you really feel compelled to do and that you truly love, please speak to a copyright attorney about this. The best way to do it is say, hey, I cannot probably afford licensing, but let's talk about royalties, because what if you got a small percentage, a couple of pennies, 50 cents, $1 per sale of this pattern? That is the big girl and big boy way to do this in this crafting business world, because as soon as you're selling one little thing on Etsy, you've just started a business, and you need to start thinking like a business owner, and you need to start saving your ass like you're a business owner, because I'm telling you, it is not anything to play around with. And so I looked up some of the penalties. It can go up to like $5,000 for your first one, just for civil penalties. And if it's willful, so without a shadow of a doubt that you do not own the rights to this character-inspired thing, that is willful. Now we're talking upwards of up to $150,000 fines for civil penalties only per incident. And an incident would be, say you have just a Chucky. That is one incident. Let's say you have a Chucky and a Michael Myers. Now you have two incidents. I don't know about you. I don't have $300,000 laying around. Oh, and also there's criminal penalties depending on whether or not the judge really wants to make an example out of you, because, that could happen. And now you could be looking at criminal fines up to 5 years in prison. And I couldn't tell for sure if that was per incident. Again, I know that sounds extreme, but it is the reality of that is within the rights of the justice system to incur these penalties and this sort of punishment on someone who is willfully disregarding copyright or intellectual property or anything like that. So this is why I'm telling you it's not worth playing around. And even if your shop got shut down, or you think enough time has passed, it's not a big deal. I will say, even though I don't have copyright cases come across my desk very often that I have to deal with, I did happen to see an instance where a company had a product name that was, I don't remember if it was identical or similar enough to another company's product name that was deemed that, hey, we were the original owners of this name. They got the cease and desist letter. You have 2 weeks to change all of your labeling, your product name, everything on your website. That is extremely difficult to do in a manufacturing setting. I'm telling you right now, that was probably really not a fun time for that company. And they had to do it. And also, that original product was put out in 1976. So, 49 years later, they can still come after you, because things don't become public domain until 70 years after the original creator has passed, if I remember correctly. So that's why you will see, there are certain characters like the vintage Winnie the Pooh that is now public domain. Steamboat Willie, I believe, became public domain either earlier this year or late last year, somewhere around there. So these things do happen, but you have to wait a really long time to be able to create your own versions of these things and to be able to sell them commercially. Because I know you're thinking, well, I'm not really commercial. I'm just doing a few sales on Etsy. That's commercial. And how it's judged is that you are now taking money away from, say, Universal Studios, because now people are buying your pattern instead of something that Universal Studios put out. And so that is how that's determined, is you are taking money away from this company. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. You could be determined that however much money that you have taken away from the original artist or creator or the owner of the art, you would have to pay that back in lost sales. And, that's purely conjecture. And again, it really would just depend on the judge and the kind of case that the original owner would put up. That I don't want to know what kind of numbers that would run, to be honest. those are beyond me, because we know people will pay a good amount of money for stuff that is licensed, that they're fans of. For instance, I do own a lot of licensed Hello Kitty shirts. I spent more than what I would get at a knockoff version, say on Amazon or Etsy. Again, I don't condone these things. Again, I'm not out to rat out anybody or go down the path of showing who these people are or turning anyone in. That is not on my heart. There are people that will do that, though, and that is something to be aware of, is that there are people that feel compelled of, I want to do the right thing, and they're going to bounty hunt and turn you in. I know that was a lot, and it was very harsh to hear that back to you, but the reality is we are living in a digital internet age in 2025 where it is very easy for people to find your versions of things that were very clearly meant to be a character that was created by someone else, especially if you name it exactly after the character and in its likeness as what the original artist or creator had done. Say in the instance of Chucky, Universal Studios can look at a red-headed doll-inspired thing with some gore on it and reasonably determine, hey, that's a Chucky, especially because you're saying it's a Chucky. So I just wanted to bring this up because I feel like I wanted to give everyone a chance to maybe not talk so openly about designers or their troubles with stolen patterns or copyright situations, because they're incriminating themselves, you're incriminating them. I'm not here to tell you whether or not you should leave your videos up. That is completely up to you and whether or not you feel compelled to protect your friends or not. So I guess make good choices and let's not fuck around and find out, because we need to know when to just stop. That's the problem, is you don't know when to stop, unfortunately. Truly, I do want to see a lot of fiber artists, crochet artists, crafters, whatever your little niche is. I want you to succeed. I want designers and pattern creators to be highly successful and really be able to do the thing that they love to do. But please create your own designs. That's all I'm asking of you, because we are just not, as a community, being smart about it. And especially if we are listing things that are clearly meant to depict something that we do not own the rights to. That is just something I have noticed as an issue lately that keeps coming up. And again, I'm sorry if you've put in a lot of work and heart and soul into what you're creating, and you have to come to terms with the fact that you simply cannot sell it and you shouldn't be selling it. And it sucks sometimes to have to do legally the right thing, but unfortunately, that's just part of being an adult. It's part of being a business owner and being in this space. Not to mention, if you had created a character out of your own mind and it blew up and someone tried to steal it and pass it off as their own, you would be the first to complain about it and piss and moan about it, because you're already bitching about stolen likenesses. So maybe just don't. That's the latest in this edition of Crochet Community Drama. If you want to check out any more crochet community drama, because yes, the yarn community, much like any other community or niche on the internet or really anywhere ever, has plenty of drama. I invite you to join me right over here, and I cannot wait to hang out with you a little bit longer.